We've done a couple episodes on the elimination of the penny so far this year. Right now, we're October 2nd, and we're in a penny shortage. So we're going to be talking about that, what retailers need to know, and what NACS is doing about it. But first, imagine turning your parking lot into a strategic asset. Electrify America offers a turnkey solution for businesses to deploy and operate their own EV charging networks through Electrify Commercial. With NEVI funding opportunities available, there's never been a better time to plug in. Visit electrifyamerica.com to learn more. Please note that this is a paid advertisement provided for promotional purposes only and does not constitute business, financial, or legal advice. Joining us for our conversation is Anna Blom. She is really the NACS person that is staying on top of this issue in seeing what we can do to address a concern that we have right now with a penny. And we have done multiple podcast episodes this year talking about consumer ideas related to the elimination of the penny. How do they feel about it? What do they know about it? What is their interest in it? We've talked about how it might affect the coin the coin drawers, and what that would do. These were all if conversations. Now we're in the it is happening conversation, and that's why we're talking to Anna today. So thanks for joining us.
I'm happy to be here, Jeff.
So as I said, we are here in the beginning of October 2nd, and we're in the midst of what you would call, I suppose, a penny shortage. Can you talk about what is going on right now?
Absolutely. We didn't think we would be in this place right now in this month of this year. But at the beginning of the year, in February, President Trump signed an executive order. He actually, I think, first put it on Truth Social, that he was going to end production of the penny, that it was wasteful. The penny costs more to produce than it's worth. And, for that reason, he was going to end the production. He cannot remove the penny from legal tender. That would be an act of Congress, but he can direct the Treasury to stop minting it. And that's what he did. So I think it was around May, there was a Wall Street Journal article on this piece.
Yes.
Where a Treasury representative gave the most information we've kind of seen to date, but they said, they were ending production and that they didn't expect circulation issues until 2026. So people, okay, they're going to come out. I think there was an assumption that there would be a plan or we would hear more. A few weeks ago, we started hearing from members, retailers around the country, hey, we're starting to see shortages of pennies and something, this is starting to affect us. As we looked into this and spoke with officials at Treasury, it became clear that in June, the Mint actually produced its final batch of pennies ever. It's a big moment. And then the last shipments of those pennies, the Fed shipped to its vaults. There are about 170 vaults around the country. They're operated in partnership with armored carriers who then deliver those to retail stores or to banks. And so those were shipped. The final batch was sent in August. Last week, the Fed put up FAQs of its vaults. Out of the 170, 18 had no pennies. They were depleted. And so the Fed had closed them for penny withdrawals. As of Monday, that number is up to 28. So we're seeing these vaults run out of pennies at really rapid speed. And we're hearing it from our stores that they're seeing stores without pennies or with a week supply left. The situation has escalated much quicker than 2026 and going into what is a busy season for all of retail.
And there have been transitions to remove the penny. It was done in Canada. It was a year-long process. What we're seeing now, and you can kind of say, well, the penny's not all that important. It doesn't really matter. Nobody really cares about pennies. It really matters because there's one obvious solution to do this, And that is what Canada does. That's what some other countries do. When you eliminate the lowest denomination, you round up, round down. If you're getting 1 or 2 cents change back, it goes to 0. If you're getting 3 or 4, it goes to 5. So that is the solution that has happened in other countries, and it is an obvious one that I think people are leaning to do here. However, there are some obstacles in front of that to do the rounding.
Yes, there are. No doubt. Rounding is the most common sense solution. It's what other countries have done successfully when they've phased out the penny or their 1 cent coins. And it's what we should be able to do here. Like you noted, Jeff, there are some complications and I will go through them. But what is interesting is there are actually states, there are 10 state and localities around the country that have cash mandate laws. And these laws require that retailers have cash and exact change. And so to round, you will be out of compliance with those laws. I knew you were going to ask me which states. So I have a list I'm going to read and localities, but it's Berkeley, California, Newport Beach, California, San Francisco, California, Connecticut, Delaware, Washington, D.C., Miami, Florida, the state of Michigan, New York City, Oregon, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and then King County and Snohomish County, Washington.
So pretty big populations.
Yes, and especially the ones that are the full state as well. So that's an issue. You have these state laws. So you could be out of compliance if you're rounding. The other thing that does affect many in our industry is if you are a SNAP retailer, the regulations say you cannot treat a SNAP customer differently than a cash paying customer, either favorably or disfavorably. So if the electronic benefits card charge is $17.36, and the cash customer buying that same thing would pay, depending on how you're rounding, 17, 40, 17, 30, 35, that is discriminating against the SNAP customer based on the regulations. So that's an issue. And then we also know states have these pricing laws. The state of Oklahoma says that the advertised price can't be different than what's at the point of sale. We also have minimum pricing laws for tobacco, below cost fuel in some areas, and milk. Yes. And so all of this kind of goes into this mix of, well, wait, how does rounding impact those laws? Are retailers who round out of compliance? And to be out of compliance, what does that mean? Are there fines from the state? Are there enforcement issues? Even, another step that we're thinking of, are there plaintiffs' attorneys that are going to be chomping at the bit to pull together a class that says, these customers were treated disfavorably because of this rounding? And so, yes, that is the issue we have right now with rounding.
So, and that is, obviously, when you have these concerns that you can't do it because we're not sure if it's in compliance, that we can't move forward. So it's difficult for retailers. That really the only logical solution in front of them is get the pennies, because if you round, you have not only the issue of compliance, but customers have no idea that this is out there. And if they don't get the proper change, I think when there's uncertainty and when there's not a lot of clarity nationwide on this, the default is somebody's taking advantage of me. And that is a terrible place for retailers to be in. One of the things that I learned when I first came to NACS is somebody said, I never want to lose a customer over a penny. Well, this almost feels like that is being put to the test now with this penny shortage. One other, so I know NACS has been very active in this situation because 150 million transactions a day and 20% roughly are cash. So it has a big impact on our industry. Can you talk about what we are looking for from a legislative front?
Yeah, so to deal with all of those issues, we just raised on the pricing issues, the SNAP issues, these cash mandate laws, how to overcome that and allow rounding is for there to be federal legislation that that has broad preemption of all of these issues, and allows retailers to round up or down to the nearest nickel. So, if it's 0.01, 0.02, you round down, 0.03, 0.04, you round up. It's fun bringing me back to, elementary math, but that's where we are. That is the best solution here. And we desperately need Congress to pass something. There are two bills that, I should say one bill, but it's in the House and Senate, had their own versions called the Common Sense Act. It's bipartisan legislation. The Senate's version actually has rounding in it. The House version got marked up in committee without rounding. It more dealt with taking it out of tender and the composition. But we are working with sponsors of both versions to include everything, urging them to amend it to include what we need to actually work and be practical for retailers.
So for people who aren't steeped in government relations, I think the first question people would say, well, there's a government shutdown. How can any sort of legislation move? And if this government shutdown exists for an federal shutdown, if this federal shutdown exists for an extended period of time, how do we get remedy to this when we desperately need it?
Yeah. So a few things. While Congress is not voting on legislation right now because of the shutdown, we are still having conversations with senior staff. They're still in their offices, essential staff. We actually met with Treasury this week, right before the shutdown, but laying out the need for some type of, guidance from Treasury, for them to put out something that is helpful for retailers and consumers alike. I think Jeff, you mentioned really a need for a consumer campaign does exist. We never want to be in a position where our employees who we value and love are the ones that are telling people for the first time, hey, we don't have any pennies. They're no longer being produced. And so we're also meeting with Treasury. So we continue to have these conversations, though, I think, as you noted, legislation can't be voted on until the government is reopened.
So as we are pushing for this and as the situation accelerates, and again, it seems like it is trivial. It is not trivial because commerce depends upon everything being in conformity. And when it's not, retailers, you never want to be in peril with fines or with lawsuits or things like that. So is there anything let's talk about what retailers may be able to do. Now, first off, NACS has been communicating this. It was in the NACS Daily the other day, obviously the podcast. We need to tell retailers that this is real and maybe see how we can suggest some things that they might be able to do so that they're best able to navigate this both from a shortage side and from a PR side.
Yeah. I think there's a few things retailers can do as we are waiting for this ultimate hopeful answer of legislation and a law. One is the education of consumers. So consider signage, what that signage might say, hey, it's not us, the government stopped producing pennies. And if you have pennies, bring them in. And we're going to try to deal with this. I think others might remember the coin shortage during COVID that was happening. It was a different circumstance. It was because people were home, they weren't spending, they weren't using change just wasn't in circulation in the same way. And retailers got really creative. There was a rounding up for charity. There were different things that people were doing. Kind of, if you maybe bring in coins, we'll give you a coupon in the store. So I know there's a number of creative things retailers are playing around with. I mean, it's part of the greatness of our industry is our entrepreneurship and creativity. The other piece, I know some are exploring rounding. You are getting to a place where if you don't have change, what do you do? And so I think members are having those conversations.
And also, of course, that involves point of sale, and contact your point of sale and have those conversations if you haven't already, or if they haven't contacted you.
That's exactly right.
So, and you had mentioned the coin shortage or coin circulation issue. That's what we called it in 2020, and that was related to, as you said, people not moving around. You didn't have the tolls and the parking meters and all that, so coins were just sitting around. So, if you have that wheelbarrow of pennies, don't drag it into the store. But if you have a jar, probably could help out now, or go to Coinstar or any of those places to get some of that. This is not the time to hoard pennies. From a purely collectible standpoint, every other country that eliminated the penny did not zoom tenfold in price. It was worth roughly the same. So if you're saying, there's going to be no more pennies, now I need to hold them on. No, they don't go up in value. They're still going to be worth like a penny, not much more in value. So unless you have those old ones like 1959 wheat, I know way too much about this stuff. We can talk about all that in another episode, but don't hoard the pennies. They will not increase in value based on what other countries have done. I mean, that's really important for retailers to understand. Second thing, and Anna, you alluded to that, if you're a customer and you see something like this, it is not the retailer's fault right now. And when retailers deal with these types of shortages all the time, and the goal, particularly in our industry, is to never let people see them, whether it's like with fuel, for instance, when there's some sort of outage because of a pipeline or a storm or something like that. We'll hear about retailers that'll drive hundreds of miles out of the way to get fuel to make sure that customers have it. They don't tell the customers about it. They just do it. Same thing with other products you had mentioned during the pandemic. Sheetz had some really clever signage during the pandemic when it was difficult to get products. And one of their signs said, sorry, your favorite isn't here today. We're working on it. Meanwhile, find a new favorite. And you can't do that with pennies. You can't do that with coins, but there might be ways to get creative with some signage. And the other thing is, I know, Anna, you and the other folks in NACS GR, in some of these missives to Congress, there isn't an easy way for retailers to say, well, we'll just price things at a level so when it's rung up, it'll go to the nearest nickel, because there's taxes involved, there's multiple items involved. And I think if you go through the store and have to reprice everything, you're also doing it for not just cash, but credit and debit. So that would be just a nightmare to do. And also customers would say, you changed every price in the store. I don't trust you. So there's the issue of trust. There's the issue of compliance, and there's a lot swirling around right now.
Yeah, and Jeff, just to that last example, it also wouldn't work, because even if you perfectly price everything to account for the taxes and be like a perfect, 5 or 0, what happened? You can't control if they put multiple things in their basket and things fluctuate, and so that's part of it too.
So maybe we just need to ask Canada. It's like, hey, you guys have all those coins that people are hoarding. They think they've gone up in value. I know, they can be. Maybe we just need to talk to them.
Well,
I'm not asking. No, not for federal, but they're sitting out there.
You have me wanting to look up how the wheat penny will play out in all of this, because that's what that was one of my questions.
Yeah. So being an ex or still coin collector, wheat pennies are the pennies that were 1959 and earlier. They are all copper. They are worth more because they're all copper. The cladding started, I believe, in 1982. So since then, they've been a zinc clad. They are not copper. They still cost more than a penny to produce, but the zinc is not necessarily worth that much. You need to go back to those 82 and previous to find some value in the copper. And you instantly see them when you get the change. They're just darker usually. And obviously the other solution, Anna, and we didn't talk about this, is that the one other thing is to encourage, say, payments by plastic, but retailers would be at a disadvantage with that one too because of swipe fees, whether it's debit or credit. So that is not really a viable solution, particularly for smaller ring items, where it would be worse than rounding down all transactions.
Yeah, we never want to discourage our cash customers from using their cash because the swipe fees are so high for our stores and the second highest cost. But there's also one thing to consider with our cash paying customers. Many of them are underbanked or unbanked and don't even have access to a credit or debit card. And so they really rely on, being able to use their cash in our stores. And we always want to accept the payment form that our customers want to use.
So bottom line, summarizing things, this is an issue, and not to inspire panic, but this is an issue. NACS is aware of it. NACS is working on how do we get some sort of solutions that work for retailers. Retailers, be aware, talk to your POS, talk to other folks about how it could affect operations, what you may or may want to do. Now, one thing, Anna, we talked about the rounding up, rounding down, and obviously if you start rounding up without consumers really having an understanding of what it is, there could be a feeling of distrust. But and it's not legally allowed, right? If you round down every transaction to the customer's favor, to the customer's benefit, that's still illegal, right?
So here's the thing. It's really complicated because it depends on the state and local laws, whether it's illegal or not. And then you have the SNAP issue where it's problematic if you're would put you out of compliance with the SNAP regulations if you're a SNAP retailer. So there's just, it depends on where you are, but it also is really dependent on these state and local laws and in the SNAP piece as well, which is why we just want this broad preemption legislation that kind of gives retailers this ability where they don't have to sweat it or fear future enforcement or lawsuits.
So basically, even if you try to do it in the customer's favor to try to mitigate this, that also creates problems. So there's a lot going on, and yes. NACS is working on it. Other associations are working on it. People are aware of it. Retailers, think about having conversations with your customers if there's some issues with you getting pennies, and consumers, don't hoard the pennies now. They're not going to be worth anything. Bring them in, get them in circulation. There are about 3 billion pennies produced a year. That's a lot of pennies. Don't think that you're 1 in 3 billion if you have a penny from last year. So anyway, Anna, I'm sure we're going to be talking more about this. I'm sure there's going to be updates in NACS Daily. Keep on looking in NACS Daily, convenience.org, online. There may be some GR alerts, etc. But thank you for staying on top of this and communicating the retailer story on this.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff. And please don't hesitate to reach out to NACS if you have questions.
Well, thanks again, Anna. And thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.